You are everywhere. When you stop being here. Buddhist perspective. Chapter 1. Breaking free from the here prison. There's a certain feeling we all know, but rarely question. It feels like we're inside, looking out, as if this body is a container, and I live somewhere behind the eyes, peering out at a world that's separate from me. From early on, we grow into this sense of being here, this particular body, this particular mind, located in one point in space, surrounded by everything else. It feels normal. But is it true? The Buddha reminded us that the mind has a habit of building boundaries. It labels, this is me, that is not me. And over time, this boundary starts to feel solid. But in truth, it's just a habit, not a fact. The feeling of being here gives us a sense of control. It tells us we're at the center of experience, and the world unfolds around us. It helps us navigate life. But it also builds a prison. A quiet one. A place where we always feel a little separate, a little alone, and a little tight inside. The Buddha taught that clinging to form, to identity, to control, contracts the mind. And this clinging often starts with the belief, I am here. We hold on to this fixed sense of place because it gives us stability. But the world doesn't work that way. Life moves. People change. Feelings rise and fall. And when we try to hold on to our center in a world that won't stop shifting, suffering begins. Think about the tension we carry, always trying to hold it together. The fear of things slipping away. The frustration when the moment doesn't go our way. The loneliness, even in a crowd. That's the cost of clinging to here. It seems small, but it touches everything. The Buddha didn't tell us to escape here in some magical way. He simply pointed out that this sense of fixed identity isn't solid. It's built from mental habits, not from truth. And the good news is, habits can be changed. But there's a subtle twist. Many of us, when we hear this, try to fix it by being more present. We try to live in the now, to ground ourselves in the moment. It sounds right. But are we freeing ourselves? Or are we just building a new kind of cage? That question, soft, simple, but deeply unsettling, is where real insight begins. Chapter 2. The Present Paradox. Awakening or clinging to the moment. There's a common idea many of us carry, even without realizing it. It's this belief that if we can just fully be in the present, everything will finally feel okay. And to be fair, that's not completely wrong. The Buddha did teach the value of presence. But the way we try to reach that presence, that's where the problem often hides. A lot of people turn to mindfulness or living in the now because they're trying to escape something. The past is filled with regrets, and the future holds fears we can't control. So we crave peace. And the present moment feels like a safe place. A place untouched by what has already happened and what might happen next. But here's the tricky part. The very effort to stay in the present often becomes another form of struggle. People try hard to keep their attention on the breath or their sensations. They push away wandering thoughts. They get frustrated when the mind drifts. They may even chase after beautiful, peaceful moments, trying to hold them still, like catching sunlight in their hands. The Buddha taught that clinging, whether it's to people, thoughts, or even a moment of peace, always leads to suffering. He reminded us that when we try to force the mind to behave, to only feel calm, to stay focused all the time, we're still trying to control things. That's not freedom. That's another subtle form of craving. And craving, whether loud or silent, keeps the wheel of suffering turning. You might not notice it at first, but that tight feeling in the chest when your mind wanders, that disappointment when your meditation doesn't feel deep enough, that moment when you scold yourself for thinking too much, it's all part of the same movement. The ego trying to get it right, to master the moment, to perfect presence. And underneath that effort is always a voice. It says, I am the one who is meditating. I am doing this. I must succeed. That voice is the self, the one who measures, judges, worries. But the Buddha didn't point to success through control. He pointed to awakening through understanding. True mindfulness isn't about winning over the present. It's about meeting whatever is here, whether it's calm or chaos, with a kind and open mind. It's not about holding your attention tight like a leash. It's more like gently returning home again and again, without blame, without pressure. He taught that awareness doesn't mean pushing things away. It means seeing clearly, feeling a thought come and letting it go. Not fighting it, not chasing it, just letting it be known. That kind of presence is soft. It doesn't need to prove anything. It allows you to notice sounds, sensations, and even difficult emotions without shrinking or grabbing. And it works because it doesn't feed the craving to hold on to anything. Even the breath, so often used in practice, isn't something to capture or control. You watch it come and go. You let it guide your awareness, not trap it. In this way, freedom doesn't come from creating the perfect moment. It comes from no longer needing one. It's the peace that comes when you stop arguing with what is. That's what the Buddha pointed to when he spoke of liberation. Not the ability to stay in the moment perfectly, but the ability to be with the moment, whatever it is, without trying to hold, reject, or escape it. When mindfulness becomes this simple act of seeing without clinging, something shifts. The sense of being a separate me, trying to manage life, starts to loosen. There's space. There's lightness. There's clarity. And in that quiet space, we begin to see not just the moment, but ourselves, more clearly than ever before. From there, something even deeper starts to unfold. Not only do we become less trapped by here, but we begin to notice something else. The invisible threads that connect us to everything, everywhere. That too begins not with effort, but with clear seeing. With a mind no longer grabbing at the present, we begin to see beyond it. Chapter 3. Seeing the Interconnectedness of All Things. There's something that happens when we begin to observe life without clinging. It's subtle at first. The noise in our minds doesn't disappear, but it softens. The rush to judge, to define, to place everything into neat categories slows down. And when that softening happens, something else has space to emerge. Something we've been too busy, too self-absorbed, or too afraid to notice. We start to feel connected. The Buddha taught that no thing exists alone. Not the tree, not the bird, not even this mind, thinking its thoughts. Everything leans on everything else, like an intricate web. If you tug on one thread, the entire web shifts. There's nothing that stands outside the whole. Take your next breath. Where did it come from? It traveled through countless trees, winds, forests, through layers of time and space, before reaching your lungs. And the air you just released will pass through another living being, nourishing them just as you were nourished. In this simple act, you are not separate. You never were. We often think of ourselves as a self-contained unit. A body here, a mind inside it, everything else out there. But this isn't how things actually work. Even your body, the thing you trust most to define you, is not entirely yours. The food you ate came from the earth, grown by the sun, moved by the hands of many people. The water you drink cycles through rivers and clouds and oceans. The thoughts that appear in your mind carry traces of books you've read, words you've heard, ideas passed down from parents, teachers, friends. Nothing you are is made from just you. The Buddha reminded us that this idea of separation is only a habit, a mental shortcut. It's not the truth. Of course, we do have boundaries. Skin wraps around muscle. There are names, roles, and responsibilities. But these are useful conventions, not absolute facts. A glass of water has edges, yes. But what's inside it? Molecules moving freely. If the glass breaks, the water doesn't stop being water. It simply flows somewhere else. What if the same was true about the self? When we pay close attention, we find that the line between me and the world isn't fixed. It shifts constantly. Think about emotions. You hear someone cry, and before you even think, something in you responds. That moment of empathy wasn't created by will. It came from somewhere deeper, where there was no calculation, no identity, no boundary. Just the natural movement of care. Or remember a time when you were doing something you loved. Painting, writing, running, helping someone, and you forgot yourself for a while. Not lost, not absent, but completely present, absorbed, unself-conscious. Those are glimpses of what the Buddha meant when he spoke of no self. It's not a blank state. It's a way of being that's open, fluid, interconnected. He taught that the self isn't a fixed object, but a process, one that depends on conditions. And when those conditions change, the sense of I also shifts. There's no solid core hiding underneath. There's just experience unfolding. This realization doesn't lead to confusion or despair. In fact, it does the opposite. It brings relief. If I'm not fixed, then I'm not trapped. I'm not limited to my old stories, not stuck with my fears, not defined by what I've lost or failed to become. I'm part of something larger, something always changing, something alive. But we don't see this clearly when we're clinging. When the mind is tight, everything feels small. The world shrinks down to our problems, our plans, our survival. That's the prison of here. But when clinging loosens, even a little, we begin to feel how spacious everything is. Our joys feel less isolated. Our pain feels less personal. Not because it doesn't matter, but because it's part of something vast, something that holds it all. That's what the Buddha saw, not just in theory, but as a living truth. So the more we observe life with open, steady attention, the more we begin to sense the thread that runs through it all. The same breath, the same earth, the same mind looking out from different eyes. And that changes everything. Chapter 4. Freedom Everywhere. non-abiding wisdom, and an open heart. There's a strange kind of silence that arrives when the mind no longer needs to be here. Not because it's gone somewhere else, but because it's not holding on to anything. It's not clinging to a fixed place or time or identity. It's not even clinging to the idea of being present. That silence isn't empty. It's full of awareness that doesn't belong to a someone. It's the kind of space the Buddha pointed to when he spoke of a mind that abides nowhere. That's what we mean by freedom. And it doesn't start with some big spiritual event. It begins when we stop tightening around where we are. The Buddha taught that the mind becomes boundless, not by traveling far, but by releasing the illusion of boundaries. He taught that true freedom is not a place to arrive at. It's the absence of clinging. It's the dropping of the self that's always trying to be somewhere, become someone, or hold on to something. When we stop feeding this restless movement, what's left is not dullness. It's stillness. It's not absence. It's presence without limits. You see, everywhere isn't about being in multiple places. It's not a magical power to extend yourself across time and space. It's about not being trapped in the idea of here as a point of control. When the mind no longer defines itself by a point, by my body, my thoughts, my identity, then the boundaries fall away. Awareness naturally doesn't stop at the skin. It notices breath, wind, sound, sensation, thought, emotion, without calling any of it mine. The Diamond Sutra says, a bodhisattva should develop a mind that does not abide in anything. It's one of those teachings that sound simple until we really sit with it. Not abiding in anything means not holding on. Not to identity, not to stories, not to even the effort to be mindful. It doesn't mean carelessness or forgetting. It means the wisdom to see that everything we try to hold is already changing. Trying to freeze any of it brings tension. Letting go brings space. But even that phrase, letting go, can be misunderstood. We might think it means pushing things away. But the Buddha reminded us that wisdom doesn't push. It simply sees. It sees the nature of things, and in that seeing, the need to hold dissolves on its own. When you truly understand that a thought is just a thought, not you don't have to drop it. It drops itself. That's the flavor of a mind free from grasping. In this freedom, you don't become passive. You become peaceful. Life still unfolds. Dishes still need washing. People still need kindness. But you're no longer weighed down by the idea that it all revolves around a fixed me. Compassion flows more easily. Attention rests more lightly. Emotions rise and fall without being turned into permanent stories. Even the pain, when it comes, doesn't become a prison. You feel it fully, but you don't collapse into it. The mind is wide enough to hold sorrow and joy without shrinking. That's what it means to be everywhere, not scattered, not fragmented, but open. Open to this moment, and also to the next, without needing to own it. There's no more tightness around being right here. There's just presence, steady, spacious, and awake. The practice that gets us here is not heroic. It's quiet. It's daily. It's choosing again and again not to tighten, not to grasp, not to resist. Some days it's easier. Some days it's not. But what matters is patience. The Buddha reminded us that liberation is not an event. It's a way of living. Each time you notice the grasping and soften, Each time you meet discomfort with awareness instead of resistance, you're not just practicing freedom. You are free in that moment. Not because the pain is gone or the world is perfect, but because you've stopped trying to force anything to be different. You don't have to reach the end of the path to taste freedom. You only have to stop clinging to where you think the path should be. And in that softening, that opening, you may start to notice you're no longer just here. You're with everything. You're everywhere.